Do's and don'ts for setting up transition 1 and transition 2 at a triathlon. This can go from sprint, Olympic, half, and full distances. As a coach, what are you trying to convey to your athletes when it comes to transitions? Not about saving time and going fast, but how to make their zone the most efficient possible.
So setting up their equipment so that you approach the bike and your stuff is in order. So, when you set up your transition, you rack your bike and you go, okay, well, you're coming out of the water first. So the first thing you're going to need is your bike stuff. So I would have my bike stuff towards the front of the bike. And then behind my my bike stuff would be like my running shoes. So it's just kind of, you come into that first and putting your helmet on your aero bars with your straps open.
Yep.
And so they're laid out, so it's easy to grab and put on. Sunglasses laying in the helmet, so that all you do is grab them and slide them up and put them on your face.
Right.
You're not trying to undo them or get them out of somewhere else. And then bike shoes, I'm comfortable with having my bike shoes clipped into my pedals, and running a rubber band back to the rear quick release and holding the pedal flat. I'm okay with doing that. And if somebody's not, then use a day to practice those things.
Sure.
And then so you've got your helmet, you got your shoes, your equipment, like you say, your gels and everything. That's all ready to go. I've used a flask when I race the longer stuff. Back to the nutrition part, you're tearing off those pieces. They're in the way. They're littering. Whatever. I just put all mine into a flask, so I have
liquid nutrition.
Yeah, like 5 energy gels in my flask, and I know how they're going to work. It's Velcroed to my top tube, so I can always grab at it.
As opposed to a water bottle.
So if I'm using my gels, because they'll have a small gel flask that holds like 5 gels. Well, I'll Velcro that to the top tube, and if the course gets bumpy, I'll put it in my back pocket. But if not, it sits right there, and then my nutrition is in my water bottles, and my aero bottle has water in it, and carrying less weight is always better. And
so when you're coming out of the water, you're running. Hopefully, if you're wearing a wetsuit, you've been brought down to your waist.
Yeah, so
if someone else has stripped you.
Yeah, you get out of the water, you get your goggles up off your face, get your wetsuit off your shoulders, get it unzipped so it's down to your hips, and it's just.
And you drop them down. You usually have a towel. I mean, I always have a towel, long towel laid out.
Right.
And like you said with the order, which is really smart, is you put your bike stuff first.
Yes.
And then you put your run stuff behind it. And then you use the towel to wipe your feet off, to get them dry if it's, because you'll probably still be wet or sandy.
Yeah.
I've seen people have a little bucket.
I've seen
or
that.
a little tray of water.
To wash.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe get a water bottle and spray it off your feet.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then, if are you going to wear socks?
Ooh, good choice. Yeah. What do you do? I mean,
longer stuff, I always wear socks.
Why?
That's a long time to have a possible. You get blister, and if you get you can get through an Olympic with a blister. I mean, it's hour and change on the bike. Probably won't get much of a blister, but if you're doing a half or a full, 2.5 plus, and then 5.5 plus on the bike, I would want to wear socks.
And depends on where you do the race. It'll probably be cold. You want your feet to try to warm up a little bit. Otherwise, they're going to be numb.
Yeah, because I have done a race that I put, the toe warmers on.
Yeah.
Because it's so cold, and then, put your shoes back on the bike. And so they're already on there.
Yeah. So do you, what about your race belt? At what point do you incorporate the race belt with your number on it?
I put it on the run. Because it's not mandatory you have it on your bike.
Okay.
So I don't want the thing flapping around. So I always leave it with my run gear. So my run gear is ready to go. The belt I use is magnetic, so it's not a buckle. So I just whip it around, and it pretty much finds itself, snaps together, and I'm not messing with it. some of the rules are if you don't have your number belt on before you leave transition, you can get a penalty for it. So
Like what it means, period?
like if they're just carrying it and it's not
Oh.
attached to them.
Okay.
That is definitely in ITU. That's a must.
What are some don'ts that you see maybe some rookie triathletes mistakes they make?
With setting up their transition? And
Yeah.
Well, one thing I always tell my people is when they rack their bike, make sure you're in the small chain ring up front.
I can see where you're going with that. Yeah.
and say maybe the middle to the higher cassette in the back, because I've seen so many people have maybe did a warm up on their bike and left it in the big chain ring and the small chain ring in the back, and they jump on and they can't pedal. They can't get going.
Right.
And next you know, they're falling over. I've seen people fall over right outside of transition. And it's always easier to gear up than it is to gear down.
Yeah.
So you can get out, start spinning the legs. Oh man, my cadence really high. We'll start shifting up. But shifting down doesn't work well.
I made this mistake just once, and I've heard other people have the same mistake, is if you use electronic shifting, DI2, for example,
Yeah.
and you don't charge it the night before,
Oh yeah.
and you're stuck in one gear, you can't change your gears.
That-
That's for the higher end bikes and components.
Yeah.
But one time I didn't do that, and lucky or unlucky, I was doing the race with my wife, and it was her first Olympic.
Okay.
So she wasn't going to go very fast anyway.
Yeah.
So luckily at the small, I was spinning so fast, and I was barely able to keep up with her at her pace. But the whole time it's like, oh, this is frustrating.
Yeah.
This is a
And
big mistake.
It was one of those mistakes that you learn from.
Oh my gosh, terrible
Yeah.
mistake. So mistakes in the is bringing too many things, loading up your bike too much.
Yeah, I mean,
transition?
you don't need the bucket. You don't need
Yeah.
a tray to wash your feet off. I mean, if you need to wipe your feet off, just grab a towel, wipe them off. You don't need another something else, because you're taking up the room of other people. You know.
One thing I've noticed in some of the longer races, and because you come out of the water and maybe your face is hot, or you get some water on your sunglasses, I just put them in my bib or my jersey.
Yeah.
Because I put them on, they might not be clear.
Right.
And you don't necessarily need your sunglasses or your goggles immediately out of transition. Just put them in your jersey, your kit, and then go about your business. That's been a time saver instead of fumbling with that.
Yeah.
That's been a good one. And then I would also suggest testing that. Put your helmet on and clip it. Put your helmet off and take it off, and then put it on and clip it. That way you know how it's going to buckle.
Yep.
It's not twisted.
Yep.
And you're familiar and comfortable with that process,
Yeah.
I guess it is. And then having your front wheel facing outwards if the transition allows for it. Or they always do that now.
USAT rules state that you have to have your front wheel on the ground. Your front wheel has to be touching the ground. Some bikes don't. Like, I've seen some pretty tall racks and some pretty short bikes, but the front wheel has to be touching the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the rule.
So coming back from transition after the bike, what is the flow? I was going to say flow of information. What's the flow of transition there that's the best, most efficient, and then things people shouldn't be doing or wasting time?
So if we go back to setting up your bike, if you do not have a designated location, then I always try to make my transition as close to the bike exit as possible.
Oh, if your bikes aren't numbered?
If your bikes are not, if you don't have a specific spot.
Okay.
And you can run faster either barefoot or when you leave transition with your running shoes on than you can with bike shoes running through transition. And running through transition with a bike is cumbersome. So if the closer to the exit, the better
Oh, the
off.
bike exit. So coming in off the bike. If you
Coming
wanna
in
be-
off the bike and or leaving, because if you're way a ways and you're
Yeah.
running through transition trying to get a bike to the exit before the mount line, that can be an issue.
If the transition allows for it, because sometimes it can be the opposite ends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then one other thing I was going to remember is I know all of us have heard just before the gun goes off in transition that loud pop.
Oh no! Yes.
Yep. Somebody has pumped up their tubeless tire, way too much pressure in it,
Yeah.
and then the sun cracks up over, hits that thing, heats it up, and bam, it pops. So then you come out of transition, or come out of the water with a flat tire.
Yeah.
And I know during Ironman, they do try to fix it. I know I've heard a couple people have, like the techs will go try to find it and get it changed for you.
That's kind of hard to do if you can just hear a sound.
Yeah.
Which tire just blew.
Yeah. But I have seen some techs changing, but it's just one of those mistakes.
So since you've left the bike and you're coming back, the next thing on the ground, besides your wetsuit, your goggles, and your cap probably, is your shoes.
Yep.
Now, how do you configure your shoes transition? Do you have a cap? Do you have your belt's there probably?
Yep.
Do you have a new set of sunglasses? Do you have socks? Do you have what are you thinking here?
So Olympic distance and sprint distance, I would go sockless. So I get off the bike, and if the towel's there and I need to wipe my foot off because I have some sand still on them, you definitely don't want that while you're running. And my shoes have speed laces on them, so I don't have to do any tying of knots and bows. And I'll just put some powder in my shoe and shake it around so it's up on the back heel, so when my foot will just slide right into it. Also help with getting a little bit rid of the moisture of sweating when you're running. And so when I come in, I'll normally, first thing, I've got the helmet off, and then I'll grab my visor, throw it on my head, slide my shoes on, grab my number belt as that's the last thing I'm grabbing is my number belt, because I can click that into place as I'm running towards the exit. And the sunglasses I have already got on my head. So so it's normally cap, shoes, belt, go.
I've seen people put their race belt like over their head, like they're putting a shirt on.
I've seen
so they don't have to worry about the clipping.
Right. Luckily, mine is the magnet style.
Yes.
that just, you can't get it wrong. But I have seen people fumble over trying to get that buckle together.
So some of the newbies they'll use the safety pins provided, and they'll put their pin on their jersey or their T-shirt.
Yeah.
Depends on how new they are in the sport and what kind of equipment they have. You suggest avoid that, or just go get a belt?
Just get a belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a number belt, and
so much easier.
It's a lot easier.
What else do you? What about nutrition or hydration? A little splash of water, maybe a new gel.
Normally, what I try to do, if it's a longer event, I start loading up on my calories. Say 5-10 minutes before I get off the bike, so that I have enough calories to get me through at least the first aid station. Then I'm not fumbling over, not looking for aid. I've already kind of loaded up on the front half. But I don't, in a sprint distance, it's just go. And Olympic distance, I maybe have a gel in my pocket and take that halfway through the run. But I
have found myself also doing some stretching, but that might be my own cramping issues. But that'd be the time to do one more little stretch of the quads, the calves before you go out on the run after the long bike.
If your body needs it, I've never had to deal with it.
But that's also you can stretch out your calves and your hip flexors on the bike the last mile or so too.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll have my folks say the last 5 minutes is normally you'll get into that section where there's no passing or so it's just spin the legs up, get the cadence up to that 95, 100 for just the last few minutes, because when you get off the bike and you're running, your cadence is going to be higher running than it was on the bike. So get your legs ready to run.
You said this, and I was thinking about one more don't, is some people might think, oh, I better fuel in T2. But you were saying, hey, fuel maybe 5-10 minutes out or a couple miles out from transition. That way you don't have a bunch of stuff in your stomach when you're beginning that run. At least your body has a chance to let it absorb inside.
Yeah.
What are some other don'ts you might think of newbies in T2 before they head out on the run? What would they be doing they don't need to do that's wasteful, inefficient?
Tying their shoelaces, just buy some speed laces. They're elastic, they stretch. You take your normal laces out, put those in, and just grab the tongue and the heel of your shoe, and your foot slides right in them. You don't have to worry about tying them up. I have seen people in transition tying their shoes
I've seen people
up.
in transition sit down and put their shoes on.
I've seen that.
That's a waste of time.
It can be, yeah. If you're able to still stand and not have anything cramp and slide your shoes on, it's always better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of comical. All right, some do's and don'ts of setting up T1 and T2.